Oops. He relocated the transponder trail that afternoon and came down into Hellas Basin late the next day. He found Sachs there, attending a conference on the new lake. Although it appeared that it was turning into a conference on agriculture under artificial lighting. The next morning, John took him out for a walk in the clear tunnels between the buildings, and they walked in a shifting yellow murk, the sun a saffron glow in the clouds to the east. Sachs is like an NPC in a video game at this stage. Don't forget to take him for a walk. Every quest goes through him. He really, yeah. Every quest leads to Sachs. The next morning, John took him out for a walk in the clear tunnels between buildings, and they walked in a shifting yellow murk, the sun a saffron glow in the clouds to the east. "I think I met the coyote," John said. "Did you? Did he tell you where Hiroko is?" "No." Sachs shrugged. It appeared he was distracted by a talk that he had to give that evening. So John decided to wait. And that evening he attended the talk with the rest of the lake station occupants. Sachs assured the crowd that atmospheric, surface, and permafrost microbacteria were growing at a rate that was a significant fraction of their theoretical maximums, about 2% to be precise, and that they were going to have to be considering the problems of outdoor cultivation within a few decades. Applause at this announcement was non-existent, because everyone there was absorbed by horrible problems engendered by the Great Storm, which they seemed to think had begun as a result of a miscalculation of Sax's. Surface insulation was still 25% of normal, as one of them waspishly pointed out, and the storm was showing no signs of ending. Temperatures had dropped, and tempers were rising. All the new arrivals had never seen more than a few meters around them. And psychological problems, ranging from ennui to catatonia, were pandemic. Sachs dismissed all of this with a mild shrug. "It's the last global storm," he said. "It'll go down in history as some sort of heroic age. Enjoy it while it lasts." This was poorly received. Sachs, however, did not notice. A few days later, Anne and Simon drove into the settlement with their boy Peter, who was now 3. He had been, so far as they could tell, the 33rd child born on Mars. The colonies established after the first 100 had been fairly prolific. John played with the boy on the floor as he and Anne and Simon caught up on the news and exchanged some of the 1001 tales of the Great Storm. Oh, wait, Anne. Oh, my God. Anne is here, everybody. Wait, who's she married to? Peter? Simon. Okay. Anne and Simon. Okay, finally. I think the last time he saw Anne was last year. And that wasn't for very long, and she was kind of pissed off at him. Wait, did they have a kid? Was that 3 years ago? Wait, she was pregnant, wasn't she? The last time... It's been 3 years? What? Am I remembering this correctly? I don't know. I didn't know she had a kid. Okay, anyways. With their boy Peter, who was now 3, he had been, as far as they could tell, the 33rd child born on Mars. John played with the boy on the floor as he and Anne and Simon caught up on the news and exchanged some of the 1,001 tales of the great storm. It seemed to John that Anne ought to be enjoying the storm and the horrendous knock it had put on the terraforming process. Like some kind of planetary allergic response. The temperatures plunging below the baseline, the reckless experimenters struggling with their puny, clogged machines. But she was not amused. Irritated as usual, in fact. A dowsing team drilled into a volcanic vent in Daedalus, and came up with a sample containing unicellular microorganisms significantly different from the cyanobacteria you released in the north. And the vent was pretty nearly encased in bedrock, and very far from any biotic release sites. They sent samples of the stuff up to Acheron for analysis, and Vlad studied it and declared that it looks like a mutant strain of one of their releases, perhaps injected into the sample rock by contaminated drilling equipment. Anne poked John in the chest. Probably Terran. Vlad said. Probably Terran. Probably Terran, her little boy said, catching Anne's intonation perfectly. Well, it probably is, John said. But we'll never know. They'll end up debating it for centuries to come. There'll be a journal devoted to that issue alone. But we'll never really know. If it's too close to tell, it's probably Terran, John said, grinning at the boy. Anything that evolved separately from Terran life would give itself away in an instant. Probably, Anne said. Probably. Except what if there's a common source? The space spores theory, for instance? Or ejecta blasted from one planet to another? With microorganisms buried in the rock? That's not too likely, is it? We don't know. We'll never know. We'll never know now. John had a hard time sharing her concerns. They might have come over from the Viking landers for all we know, he said. There's never been a very effective effort to sterilize our explorations here. That's just the way it is. Meanwhile, we've got more pressing problems, such as a global dust storm, longer than the longest one ever recorded, or an influx of immigrants whose commitment to Mars was minimal as their housing, or an upcoming treaty revision that no one could agree on, or a terraforming effort that a lot of people hated, or a home planet going critical, or an attempt or two to do John Boone harm. Yeah, Anne said. I know. But all that's politics. We'll never get away from that. This was science. A question I wanted answered. And now I can't. Nobody can. John shrugged. We'll never answer that one, Anne. No matter what. That was one of the questions that was fated to always remain unanswered. Didn't you know that? Probably Tywin. Martian rovers have more STDs than koalas. Tywin. And we'll never know. Think I'll get an Oscar for that Anne reading? I hope so. Also as Peter. I'm afraid you have crabs. And the crabs have gonorrhea. I'm a doctor. Oh, Elma, thank you for $5. A few days after that, a rocket landed on the Little Lake Station spaceport pad. And a small group of Terrans emerged out of the dust, still bouncing around as they walked. Investigative agents, they said, here on Unoma Authority, to look into sabotage and related incidents. There were 10 of them in all. 8 clean-cut young men right out of the vids, and 2 attractive young women. Most had been assigned from the American FBI. Their leader is a tall, brown-haired man named Sam Houston, requested an interview with Boone. John agreed politely. Oh my god. Detective John is going to meet an actual detective and he's going to cry. He's going to crumble immediately. He's going to admit to espionage that he didn't even commit. He's good, dude. This FBI agent is gonna crack him like a nut. John's gonna be like, I'm a detective too. You could consider me. I'm basically FBI. And the FBI agent's gonna be like, I think you did it. And he's gonna. Yeah, he's gonna. Okay, anyways, I'm just making stuff up. Okay. Sam Houston requested an interview with Boone. If Kim Stanley Robinson realized most of the 100 would have had Pikachu and Naruto tattoos, he would have burned the first draft. Ow. I don't think so. It's only 2027. If I had a Pikachu tattoo, I don't think I'd stand a chance. John agreed politely. When they met after breakfast the next morning, 6 of the agents were there, including both women. He meekly answered every question without hesitation, though instinctively he told them only what he thought they already knew. Plus a bit more to seem honest and helpful. They were polite and deferential, thorough in their questioning, extremely reticent if he asked them anything in return. They seemed unaware of much of the detail of the situation on Mars, and asked him about things that had happened in the first year at Underhill, or during the time of Hiroko's disappearance. They obviously knew the events of that time, and the basic facts of the various relationships among the first 100's media stars. They asked him a lot of questions about Maya, Phyllis, Arkady, Nadia, the Acheron group, Sax, all of whom were well known to these young Terrans, permanent fixtures on their TV. But it seemed they knew little beyond what had been taped and sent back to Earth. John, his mind wandering, wondered if that would be true of all Terrans. After all, what other sources of information did they have? At the end of the interview, one of them, named Chang, asked him if there was anything else he wanted to say. John, who had omitted his account of the midnight visit from the coyote, among many other things, said, "I can't think of anything." Chang nodded, and then Sam Houston said, "We'd appreciate it if you'd give us access to your AI on these matters." "I'm sorry," John said, looking apologetic. "I don't give access to my AI." "You have a destruct lock on it?" Houston said, looking surprised. "No, I just don't do it. Those are my private records." John stared the man in the eye, watched him squirm under the gaze of his associates. We can get a warrant from Unoma if you like." "I doubt you can, actually. And even if you do, I won't let you in." John smiled at him, almost laughed. Another moment where being the first man on Mars was useful. There was nothing they could do to him without causing far more trouble than it was worth. He stood up, surveyed the little gang with as much easy arrogance as he could muster, which was quite a lot. "Let me know if there's anything else I can do for you." He left the room. "Pauline, click into the building comm center and copy anything you can that they send out." He called Helmut. Remembering that his own calls would be opened as well, he kept his questions brief, as if just checking credentials. Yes, a team had been sent out by Unoma. They were part of a task force, assembled in the last 6 months to deal with the problems. Police on Mars, then, as well as a detective. Police on Mars, then, as well as a detective. Well, it was to be expected. But it was a nuisance, nevertheless. He couldn't do much with them hanging around watching him, suspicious because he hadn't given them access to Pauline. And really, there wasn't that much to do in Hellas anyway. There had been no incidents of sabotage here, and it seemed unlikely that any would occur now. Maya was unsympathetic. She didn't want to be bothered with his problems. She had enough problems of her own, with the technical aspects of the Aquifer project. "You're probably their chief suspect," she said irritably. "These things keep happening to you. A truck in Thaumasia, as well as Bakusin, and now you won't let them into your records? Why won't you just do it?" "Because I don't like them," John said, glaring at her. It was back to normal with Maya. Well, not really. They went through their routines in a kind of high spirits, as if playing a good role in the theater, knowing that they had time for everything, knowing now what was real, what lay at the base of their relationship. So, in a sense, it was much better. On the surface, however, it was the same old melodrama. Maya refused to understand, and in the end, John gave up. After that, he spent a couple of days thinking it over. He went down to the station's labs and had the sample of skin taken out from under his fingernails, cultured, cloned, and read. No one with that genome was in the planetary records. So he sent the information to Acheron, requesting an analysis and any information they could give. Ursula sent their results back, coded, with a single word added at the end. Congratulations. He read the message again, swore out loud. He went out for a walk, alternately laughing and swearing. "Damn you, Hiroko, damn you to hell. Get out of your hole and help us." "Ah ha ha ha, you bitch. I'm sick of this Persephone shit." Even the walk tubes were oppressive at that moment, and he went to the garage, suited up, and went out the lock for a walk outside. The first in many days. He was out at the end of the northern arm of the town on a smooth desert floor. He wandered around, staying with the fluctuating column of dust-free air that every city created, thinking the situation over as he surveyed the city. Hellas was going to be much less impressive than Burroughs, or Acheron, or Ekus, or even Senzini Na, located at the low point of the basin. Or Senzini Na. Located at the low point of the basin, it had no heights to build on, no prospect. Although the whipping dust made it a poor time to judge that. The town had been built in a crescent, which would eventually become the shoreline of a new lake. That might look nice when it happened. A waterfront. But meanwhile, it was as featureless as Underhill. With all the latest in power plant and service apparatus, intake vents, cables, tunnels like giant sloughed snakeskins. The old scientific station look. No aesthetics involved. Well, that was fine. They couldn't put every town on a mountaintop. Two people passed him, their faceplates polarized. Odd, he thought, it being so gloomy in the storm. Then they leaped on him, knocked him down. He shoved off the sand with a wild John Carter leap and threw his fists around him. But to his surprise, they were running off into the clouds of dust whipping by. He staggered, stared after them. They disappeared behind veils of dust. I just love that John thinks no harm can ever come to him. He's such a lib-coded golden retriever boyfriend. He's trying so damn hard. Literally everybody's jealous of him or hates him or both. And he's like, I can't think of any enemies that I have. No. Frank, he's like a brother to me. It's adorable. He only has one weakness, the need to breathe oxygen. Luckily, no one knows that. He's like, yeah, I'm good. Like, literally, somebody could spit on him. Somebody could spit at him and say, fuck you, John. And he'd be like, they weren't talking to me. Why would they have said that to me? That makes no sense. Which, to be fair, is true. He just doesn't understand. Oh my. Okay. They attacked him, then they ran off like cowards. He staggered and stared after them. They disappeared behind the veils of dust. His blood jolted through him. Then he felt his shoulders burn. He reached up and back. They had cut his walker open. Yeah, exactly. They had cut his walker open. He pressed his hand over the rip and began to run hard. He couldn't feel his shoulders at all anymore. It was awkward to run with his arm up and behind his neck. His air supply seemed to be all right. No, a tear in the neck. His air supply seemed to be all right. No, a tear in the tube at the neck. He took his hand from his shoulder long enough to dial maximum flow on his wrist pad. The cold flowed down his back like ghost ice water. 100 below 0 degrees Celsius. He was holding his breath and could feel dust on his lips, caking his mouth. Impossible to tell how much CO2 was getting into his oxygen supply, but it didn't take much to kill you. The garage appeared out of the murk. He had run right to it and was feeling mighty pleased with himself until he came to the locked door and pushed the open button, and nothing happened. It was easy to lock a lock's outer door. Just leave the inner one open. His lungs burned. He needed a breath. He ran around the garage to the walk tube that connected it to Habitat proper, reached it, stared in through the layers of plastic. No one in sight. He took his hand away from the rip on his shoulder and as quickly as he could opened the box on his left forearm and took out the little drill, turned it on, and plunged it into the plastic, which gave without breaking, and gathered up around the spinning bit until the drill almost broke his elbow. He poked wildly with it and finally got the plastic to tear, then ripped downward, widening the hole until he could dive through it helmet first. When he was inside to the waist, he held still, using his body as a rough plug for the hole. He unclipped his helmet and ripped it off his head and gasped for breath as if coming up from a long dive. Out, in, out, in, out, in. Yes, John Boone is now a butt plug. Out, in. Get that CO2 out of the blood. His shoulders and neck were numb. Down at the garage, an alarm bell was ringing. After a 20-second compressed burst of thought, he yanked his legs through the hole and sat down and blah, blah, blah. After 20-second compressed... After a 20-second compressed burst of thought, he yanked his legs through the hole and ran down the quickly depressurizing tube toward the Habitat, away from the garage. Happily, the door there opened on command. Once inside, he jumped in an elevator and dropped to the 3rd floor below the ground, where he was staying in one of the guest suites. He let the elevator door open and looked out. No one in sight. He hustled down to his room. Inside, he stripped off the walker and stashed it and the helmet in his closet. In the bathroom, he winced at the sight of his whitened shoulders and upper back. A really horrible case of frostnip. He took some oral painkiller and a triple dose of a Meggendorf. Put on a shirt with a collar, pants, shoes. He combed his hair, composed himself. The face in the mirror looked glassy-eyed and distracted, almost stunned. He threw his face through the most violent contortions, slapped it, resettled his expression, started breathing in a deep pattern. The drugs began to kick in. And his reflection looked a little better. Wait, is this a section end? No, okay. I don't know when the end of part 5 is, but this... The drugs began to kick in, and his reflection looked a little better. He went out into the hall and walked to the big trench wall concourse, which extended downward 3 more stories. He walked along the railing, looking at people below, feeling a curious mixture of elation and rage. Then Sam Houston and one of his women colleagues approached him. "Excuse me, Mr. Boone, but would you please come with us?" "What's up?" he said. "There's been another incident. Someone cut open one of the walkway tubes." "Cut open a walk tube? You call that an incident? We have mirror satellites flying out of orbit and trucks falling into moleholes. And you're calling a prank like that an incident?" Houston glared at him, and Boone almost laughed at the man. "How do you think I can help?" he asked. "We know you've been working on this for Dr. Russell. We thought you might like to be informed." "Oh, I see. Well, let's go have a look at it then." And then it was a matter of going through the paces for nearly 2 hours, his shoulders burning like fire the whole time. Houston and Chang and the other investigators spoke to him as if in confidence and anxious for his input. But their gazes were coolly evaluative. But their gazes were coolly evaluative. John returned them with a little smile. "Why now, I wonder?" Houston said at one point. "Maybe someone doesn't like you being here," John said. Only when the whole charade was finished did he have some time to think about why he wanted to keep them from finding out about the attack. No doubt it would have drawn more investigators up, and that was bad. And certainly it would have become the top news story all over Mars and Earth, tossing him back into maximum fishbowl. And he was sick of the fishbowl. But there was something more that he couldn't quite pin down. "This is my jurisdiction." There was something more that he couldn't quite pin down. The subconscious detective. He snorted with disgust. To distract himself from the pain, he stalked around from dining hall to dining hall, hoping to catch some expression of poorly concealed surprise when he walked by each room. "Back from the dead. Which one of you murdered me?" And once or twice he saw someone flinch from his roving gaze. But the fact was, he thought dourly, many people flinched when he looked at them, as if avoiding the gaze of a freak or a condemned man. He had never felt his fame in quite that way before, and it made him angry. The painkillers were wearing off, and he returned early to his rooms. His door was open. When he rushed in, he found 2 of the Unoma investigators inside. "What are you doing?" he cried angrily. "Just looking out for you," one of them said smoothly. They glanced at each other. Wouldn't want someone to try something. Like breaking and entering? Boone said, leaning against the doorway. Part of the job, sir. Sorry we've upset you. They shuffled nervously, trapped in his room. Just who gave you authorization for this? Boone said, folding his arms over his chest. Well, they looked at each other again. Mr. Houston is our superior officer. Call him and get him here. One of them whispered into his wristband. In a suspiciously short time, Sam Houston appeared down the hallway. And as he hurried up, glowering, John laughed. What were you doing, hiding around the corner? Houston walked right up to him, stuck his face forward, and said in a low voice, Look, Mr. Boone, we're in the midst of a very important investigation here, and you are obstructing it. Despite what you seem to believe, you are not above the law. Boone jerked forward so that Houston had to flinch to avoid bumping their nose. To avoid their bumping noses. You aren't the law, he said. He unfolded his arms and poked Houston in the chest, driving him back further down the hall. Now Houston was losing his temper, and Boone laughed at him. What are you going to do to me, officer? Arrest me? Threaten me? Give me something good to include in my next report on Eurovid? Would you like that? Would you like me to show the world how John Boone was harassed by some tin badge functionary who came to Mars thinking he was a sheriff in the Wild West? He remembered his opinion that anyone who spoke of themselves in the third person was a self-declared idiot, and laughed and said, John Boone doesn't like that kind of thing. No, he doesn't. John's fucking losing it. No, he doesn't. The other two had taken the opportunity to slip out of his room and were now watching closely. Houston's face was the color of Ascraeus Mons, and his teeth were revealed. No one's above the law, he grated. There are criminal acts occurring here, very dangerous ones, and quite a few of them happen when you're around. Like breaking and entering? If we determine that we need to check your quarters or your records to pursue our investigation, then we're going to do that. We have that authority. I say you don't, John said arrogantly, and snapped his fingers in the man's face. We are going to search your room, Houston said, articulating each word carefully. Get away, Boone said, contemptuously jerking at the other two and waving them back. He laughed, lip curled with scorn. That's right, go. Get out of here, you incompetents. Go back and read the regs on search and seizure. He went in his room and closed the door behind him. Yeah, too much Omegendorf, and he literally just had a near-death experience. And his reaction to that was, I'm John Boone. I'm just gonna take a bunch of painkillers, probably took a shot of whiskey. lights up a cigar and starts stomping around after, like, putting a shirt over his fucking frostbitten shoulder. Two shots. And starts arguing with FBI agents. I'm not suspicious, you're suspicious. Yeah, stuff happens around me because I'm investigating it. That's right, get out of here, you incompetents. Go back and read the regs on search and seizure. He went in his room and closed the door behind him. He paused. It sounded like they were leaving. But either way, he had to act like he didn't care. He laughed, went to the bathroom, and took some more painkillers. This poor man. They hadn't yet gotten to the closet, which was lucky. It would have been hard to explain that torn walker without telling the truth. And that would have been messy. Curious how tangled things got when you concealed the fact that someone tried to kill you. That made him pause. The attempt had been pretty clumsy, after all. There must have been 100 more effective ways to kill someone out in a walker on Mars. So if they were just trying to scare him, or were perhaps hoping that he would try to conceal the attack so that they could find him lying and then have something on him? He shook his head, confused. Occam's razor, Occam's razor. The detective's primary tool. If someone attacks you, they mean you harm. That was the basic. The fundamental fact. It was important to find out who the attackers were. And so on. The painkillers were strong. And the Omegendorf was wearing off. It was getting hard to think. It was going to be a problem disposing of the walker. The helmet, in particular, was a big, bulky thing. But now he was into it. And there was no graceful way out. He laughed. He knew he would think of something eventually. I have to pee really bad, but the next sentence, which will continue next Monday book club, he wanted to talk to Arkady. He's gonna go see Arkady next. So stay tuned, folks. Thank you. Thank you for listening. I can't wait to see what Arkady has to say about all of this shit. way the way KSR started with John's End makes this whole chapter compelling, and it soars at the end. Shocked how well it worked as a writing style. Should have had the opposite effect. Yeah. I haven't even finished it yet, but I agree. Like, it's so... I feel like I'm watching, like in cartoons, and there's an anvil hanging over his head. And it's like, am I supposed to laugh? It doesn't. It makes it so much worse. Dude, also, wait, hold on. John fucked Hiroko? I knew it, dude. When he's like, I want to talk to Hiroko, I was like, oh my god, John just thinks every woman is hot. Does anyone remember me saying that? That was when he said something about Hiroko, and now that he knows that kid whose face he scratched, it's his own son. You dirty dog. Congratulations.